Welcome, YouTube. This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by 2 Chainz. Basically, this project is called Boats 2 Me Time, and it came out in the late summer of 2013. The thing about this particular project is 2 Chainz was on a high in the early 2010s with some mixtapes and stuff like that, but he also dropped the album in 2012 based on a true story, which I reviewed in December. Pretty hit album there. Definitely had some heralded hits. Definitely was kind of an amalgamation of like early definitely was an amalgamation of early 2010s trap with like some mixtape fare in there. It was just interesting because that particular album had some mixtape type cuts on there, especially on the deluxe edition that just had some of that bonus type fare. Mike Will made it was a pretty big producer around that time, and he continued to be around this album time, but he just wasn't on this album as much. But 2012 in 2012 Mike Will made it was kind of a big deal, and it's just kind of the concept that he had like some mixtape type songs on there and stuff like that. Some can't really remember them, but it was similar to like the pitch of Yo Gotti and Future, some of those type folks. Just some early 2010s mixtape type fare. Definitely a pretty good concept. But this particular album is a more realized version of like Boats, the first one, based on a true story. I just had to say about that particular album compared to this one. I mean, this one's a little bit more. It has more refinement, and it definitely has a lot more wintry type sounds in here, which I did appreciate. This has some good kind of amalgamations. Like Feds Watching is a good song. Also, there's just some exotic type tunes on here, and just some there's just some exotic type tunes and some differential type stuff. I feel like this is just kind of a good amalgamation just because 2 Chainz did not have the sophomore slump, which initially when I used to listen to this project, I kind of felt like it somewhat did just because it only had 2 singles compared to the first Boats having 3. But this album did have a couple promotional singles, so it's a good concept to kind of get this one in particular. It's just kind of the concept that it just kind of felt like this project just came and went. I mean, really the promotion for this album wrapped up in about the fall of 2013. So really, it only lasted for about 3.5, 4 months, something like that, as far as that pitch kind of went with it. But I kind of looked after. I was expecting this album to last longer, kind of into 2014, kind of like what happened with the first Boats, where that lasted into about the first half of 2013. But 2 Chainz, originally he was going to drop a Boats 3. Also, there was going to be kind of some. Originally, 2 Chainz was going to drop like a Boats 3 in 2014. Also, that was originally something that was going to happen, but it just kind of got scrapped as time went along as far as that pitch kind of happened with it. But it was a good concept. This is definitely a pretty heralded album. It's pretty much on par with the first one, even though the first one might be more revolutionary. This one just has a little bit more refinement. This one just has a little bit more refinement. I definitely feel like the amalgamation of this particular project is just interesting. Like I was saying, it has some wintry type songs on here with like some refined trap type music. I mean, the mixtape type fare is on here, just not as heavily this time. It just feels like these are more kind of spare album cuts more so than like spare mixtape cuts. Where last time it just felt like 2 Chainz threw some mixtape cuts that would have been on like the next mixtape he would have done and just put them on like the Boats 2012 album. This one kind of feels like just like if you were to get like bonus cuts that would be on like a deluxe edition or just like an extra kind of something like that. This is like bonus kind of songs for like the album. I feel like some of these songs are just kind of on like the standard album. It's not like they're bonus songs in terms of quality, but it's just kind of the concept of these just feel like mixtape cuts, just in like a more kind of album, just like extra kind of format. So I would say about that was just kind of a good concept. So it keeps the mixtape type fare, keeps like some adds some new tricks like some songs like Feds Watching, Used To, some of those type ones. Netflix is a pretty clever song. Where You Been's a pretty nice one. All the singles are pretty good. Has like some summary, has some win. This project has some wintry type pep and stuff like that. But we'll go ahead and get into this album here. So basically there were only 2 singles off this project. I could talk about the promotional singles, but I'll just talk about them later on as we go along with this. So I just would have to say basically the first single is Feds Watching. This is a pretty highlighted one. This has Pharrell on there to back 2 Chainz up just on this particular song. Pretty hit song to kind of get that within that sense. This is like a glazed kind of summer stretcher, I would have to say, but it has an alert jive and snap about it. I would definitely feel like this is just a clever single and a thorough kind of swag rap type song, I would have to say. So it's interesting to kind of get swag rap way out in 2013 just because it was starting to die down quite a bit by this particular point. 2 Chainz at least pulled that particular vibe off with swag rap a little bit better on. 2 Chainz at least pulled off that vibe a little bit more on the 2012 album based on a true story, but this particular time there's not as much swag rap on here, but this is at least one that kind of has that sort of similarity towards it. Just the last batch of like some swag rap from what I could remember, I'd have to say good concept to kind of get that in particular. Just a real nice glaze, kind of sunset-y. This summer stretcher, I would definitely have to feel like pretty nice one. Real dope song, just a real clever type one. Just has an original factor, and it's a real nice one to kind of have in token like the summertime. Just kick back and just have some good stretching kind of summers as far as that pitch kind of. It's just a nice one. Used to is a pretty highlighted single. Used to listen to this song quite a bit. It's a real excellent type song on here. This is like a feral kind of nightclub smash hit, I would definitely have to say. This song has some riveting energy and vibe, I would definitely feel like. This is just an easy dance hit, and it's a good song to get cranked to. This is a great song to kind of get drunk and bent to, as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with. I just would say this is some excellent type fare just within that particular sense. It kind of jacks. It kind of has similarities to like the Back That Ass Up by Juvenile, the same kind of lyric pitch that Juvenile had on that particular song, which is a pretty interesting concept. But this beat is just very lit. This is like a real jive kind of song. I definitely feel like this is like a real jive type song. I was really surprised that 2 Chainz just rap promotion of his particular album after this particular song. Like, I want to say that Netflix was supposed to be like the third single or something like that. Back in the day, Wikipedia used to have more articles written about this particular album, but I think they were going to go with Netflix and Where You Been for a little bit, but they just kind of became promotion. But they just kind of became promotional singles as far as that cycle kind of went with it. But Used to is an real excellent song here. I would have to say it's just kind of the concept of the promotion wrapped up to this particular one. But it's a very litty song. This one just has a lot of liveliness. It's a lot of feralness. This is the sort of song that this is unlike. This is another one that was unlike stuff that 2 Chainz had done at the time. So it's a pretty dope concept for that. Real mean hook on there also. Just a real nice one. Basically, I'm reviewing the deluxe edition of this particular album, which there would be 17 songs on here, and out of those 17, I wound up recommending to you 12. So that's pretty dope concept. Kind of get that. I do recommend all 3 of the songs on the deluxe. So I just would recommend the deluxe, but so I just would completely recommend the deluxe. But the thing about it is, I don't recommend. There is an 18th song on Spotify, which is like the Fast and Furious soundtrack. I'm not going to review that one this time just because I'll just review the Fast and Furious soundtrack when I eventually get to that. But to talk about the 12 songs, I recommend on here. So the 12 songs I recommend would be Feds Watching, Used to, I Do It, Where You Been, Netflix, Extra, Mainstream Ratchet, Living, Fork, 36, Employee of the Month, and Live and Learn. So basically, a pretty highlighted one right off the bat, and this is on the deluxe edition, is Live and Learn. This is like a real nice smoking type tune. I'd have to say this is a great ruminating gem. I'd have to say this is like a thoughtful kind of smoke a few hazer. I would definitely feel like, and this just reminds me of like Lil Wayne and mixtape type Pharaoh. This sort of song just reminds me of Lil Wayne and mixtape type Pharaoh, I'd say. So it's pretty good concept. So it's a pretty good concept. Get that one in particular, I'd have to say. So this song has Pusha T on there. So this song has Pusha T on there, and then Dollar Boy, who was originally in Play a Circle with 2 Chainz. I'd have to say pretty good concept to get that one in particular. This is just a real, I really like the kind of malaise type feel of this particular one. This could almost be like a head shop type tune, just something you'd listen to in a more kind of exotic type place. There are some exotic ones on here, like Feds Watching, Live and Learn, some of those type ones. I want to say there's at least another one. Maybe there isn't, but I just look after the concept. It's just kind of a nice kind of smoke filled this type fare as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's a real nice soulful type one. Definitely could have used another song like this, I'd have to say, but this is just a clever one. Employee of the Month is another nice one. Employee of the Month is another nice one. Definitely recommend this one. This is like a good EDM type pitch of a song. It's interesting that 2 Chainz continue to do some. It's interesting that 2 Chainz continue to do EDM as the subgenre started to die down and stuff. I'd have to say it's a pretty dope concept. Get that one. I definitely recommend the deluxe. This is a pretty highlighted one. I'd have to say this is a relatively ready for blue collar evening hop. Employee of the Month is the relatively ready for blue collar kind of evening hopper. I'd have to say this is just a good pristine energy with some trap kind of mixed in. So I'd have to say this song is some good pristine energy with some trap mixed in. So I would have to say I do fuck with this particular song. It's a pretty good concept. Get this one in particular. This is kind of like a more makeshift type tune. I'd have to say good song to kind of listen to at work within a certain sense. It's a little bit more turned up. I'd probably say the energy is kind of maybe a notch or two more turned up than most makeshift type fare. But I do like the concept of 2 Chainz kind of blending with some makeshift type fare. I do like the concept of 2 Chainz blending with some makeshift type fare as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. It doesn't happen too commonly on here. I'd have to say maybe there's like maybe Feds Watching could be a little bit of like that just within a certain kind of pitch, just a little bit more laid back type sense. It's not quite as serious toned and quite as steadfast and like makeshift. But I would still have to say there's a couple songs on here, but it's not as full blown. I'd have to say, but I do feel like Employee of the Month is kind of one that you could listen to in like an SFW relative kind of sense. I'd have to say pretty good concept for that. Living is another highlighted one off the deluxe. I'm going to go ahead and Living is another highlighted one off the deluxe. Definitely appreciate this one. This is like a boppish kind of trap rumbler. Living is like a boppish kind of trap rumbler. I'd have to say this is similar to Where You've Been. I would definitely feel like, and this just feels like a DJ Mustard Ratchet type gem. And this just feels like a DJ Mustard Ratchet type gem, I would have to say. And this has a pretty nice groove on there. So it's a pretty highlighted one. This definitely reminds me of like a bonus cut that 2 Chainz would have done on the first boat, something like that. It's the same concept of like a mixtape type fare. This feels like a mixtape type type tune, but then it kind of doesn't. It just has a certain degree of polish. It just kind of feels like an album extra cut, like I was saying before, where it's definitely a pretty bona fide type hit, but it kind of has mixtape type fare, but it's just the polish of it just makes it kind of feel like an album extra, I suppose. So it's a dope concept to get some of these particular type gems, just because I do like the kind of mixtape hungry, kind of more lyricist type 2 Chainz, just within that kind of urban sense. It's a pretty dope concept to get some of those. So talk about a few more of these, like Where You Been is a pretty highlighted one. This is a promotional single. This definitely has like a sparkly kind of wintry commercial trap beat, I would have to say. It's a pretty affable mainstream pitch that this song particularly kind of has, and this is just a breadwinner and a social snap of a song. Definitely like this one. Didn't know about this song as much by 2 Chainz. This is one that I kind of skipped over back in the day, but I had to say this is a pretty dope concept. Get this one in particular. Do you like some of this wintry type pitch? I mean, it almost kind of feels like a residential type tune. I can almost see this. I mean, I can see this being some initial kind of dap getting stuff like that, just kind of the entry type stuff of just like the dapper type stuff, just kind of initial congregating stuff like that. But I can also kind of see it as like a decent kind of nightclub type fare. It's just some of the stepping up, just like in the November, December, January type months, as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Just a real nice one to kind of get within that tone. Just I do appreciate this song. It's probably one of the better ones. This was one that helped convince me to kind of fuck with this project a lot more nowadays, I'd have to say, but I do like the concept of it. I do. It's a pretty highlighted one. This has Drake and Lil Wayne on there. It's a pretty nice bop to kind of get this one. This is like a vintage drill type rumbler. I'd have to say it has a crisper kind of colder brush about it. I'd have to say, and this is just some rowdy kind of. The song is just a rowdy kind of wave maker. I would have to say, and this is pretty much like a nightclub ringer. I'd have to say. So this one's a pretty noisy type one. This reminds me of something that Waka Flocka Flame and folks like that would kind of have done back in 2011, 2012. Definitely something that was starting to dry up by late 2013 as far as that pitch kind of happened with it, but still a good concept. Kind of get this one. It's really nice, noisy type one. Lil Wayne and Drake fit this song pretty well. I'd have to say this is a dope concept. This is another type rumbler to kind of have on here. Just one kind of for just old fashioned type sense of just paying attention to how much I do it as almost like a reflectionary type number compared to songs like Hard in the Paint by Waka Flocka Flame, where drill just initially had that kickoff. It's just interesting how time had passed, and you look at the. It's just interesting how time had passed, and you look at the concept of just where drill had kind of been by that particular point as it was starting to dry up, and it just felt like that. It was just interesting how time had passed, and drill was starting to dry up a little bit. It was just not as popular as it was in 2010. Just kind of reflecting on those times going from 2010 to 2013, some of those type pitches. Just a good concept, but it is a pretty nice drill type tune. I'd have to say Netflix with Fergie is a real nice one. This is probably one of the best songs on the album. I'd have to say, really appreciate the pitch of this particular one. This is like a colder weather kind of outing pizzazz of a song. I'd have to say the song is like a festive kind of mid-paced dance cut. I would definitely feel like, and this is just some stellar EDM craze, and it's just a good kickstart. So this one has a pretty dope concept. This one, I feel like Netflix, Mainstream Ratchet, and Employee of the Month all have some EDM type fare to kind of have just within that relative sense. There's some good nightclub type fare and stepping out just within a dance club sense. So it's interesting kind of get these sorts of songs because these were some interesting pitches for 2 Chainz as he started to level up more and expand like his songwriting and repertoire as far as that particular kind of happened. These were just some nice ones. Definitely a different kind of shade of talent just compared to the first Boats as far as that pitch kind of happened. These are definitely some gloss. These are definitely some more glossarized and stuff like that. Just the expansion of this particular album going from the one in 2012 to the one in 2013 is pretty severe. I didn't realize that back in the day, but it is an advancement compared to the sound that was just a year before. So I'd have to say it's a good varietized type sound that just pulled it off and got more of a repertoire. I'd have to say a good concept. Extra is another highlighted one. This had Extra is another highlighted hit that has Rich Homie Quan on there. I'd have to say this is like a more vanilla trap type cut. This song is like a more vanilla trap type cut. I would have to say this is similar to 2 Chainz mixtape days. I would definitely feel like, and this is just this song is just an evening hangout haze, and it's a basic bopper. I would definitely feel like. So I like the concept of this particular song. It's a real nice highlight one. This is another one that I didn't pay attention to back in the day. I'd have to suppose it was a pretty good concept. Get this one in particular. Just really kind of icy type one. Just another basic type trap type tune that just works pretty well. Just interesting kind of get some of these because these just feel like more standard album cuts compared to some of the mixtape type fare of the first Boats as far as that pitch kind of happens. And I feel like the first Boats was just a lot more rugged and just had some of that more kind of street and urban and rugged type sense, I would have to say. But this one just has more refinement sort of stuff as 2 Chainz started to get used to albums more just within that context. I kind of feel like it was just a more realized type version of the stuff that now some of these could just be. The budget of some of these songs on here like Extra and Living and Fork and 36 and some of these type ones just don't feel as edgy, but they do have some good concepts. It's just like some good mainstream ratchet type music I really do feel like 2 Chainz was basically one of the ringleaders for ratchet type music, especially in late 2013. Now, he did switch his style up by the time we got to his third album, Call Grove, in 2016, but I would have to say it's just the concept that some of this initial type stuff that was going on in late 2013, pretty good realized type sound for ratchet type music, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept to get that in particular. Mainstream ratchet's like another highlighted one. It's like a dreary kind of high as shit trance like nightclub bop, I would have to say. Definitely appreciate this one quite a bit. This has an original pitch towards it, and this just has like a high, and this song just has a high psych factor. So I would have to say just about this particular one, if you need a song to really get you psyched up, this is probably one of the highest grade type songs on here for some of the craziest type pitches. This is definitely one of the most litty songs. 2 Chainz had songs like this on the first Boats as far as that particular pitch kind of happened with it, but I would just have to say about this one, this is like a real high octane type one. Definitely trance type music. Just really feel like just really getting torched, stuff like that. Great song to smoke a whole bunch to, just have several swishers, stuff like that, just really get torched up and just have as some pretty good dance type craze. I like the concept of this particular song, mainstream ratchet, just because that's what 2 Chainz was doing in 2013, was ratchet type music. So like I was saying, he was the ringleader of like I was saying, he was definitely a ringleader of ratchet type music, and he was advancing the sound as far as that pitch can happen. This is definitely a good example of that, I'd have to say. Pretty dope concept. So Fork is a pretty highlighted one. This is like some vintage mixtape type bruiser. Fork is basically like a vintage mixtape type bruiser, I'd have to say. It's like a darker kind of brooding residential smoke one cut, I would definitely feel like. And this is just a good swamped kind of hangout type tune. So I would definitely feel like about this particular one, pretty highlighted one. Fork just feels like more murky type hangout type fare, I would have to suppose. Definitely some decent kind of PlayStation type music, smoke a few type tune, just get some snackage, stuff like that. Just have some standard kind of kickback and like a more house party type sense. It's almost kind of like a trap house type cut, I would have to say. Definitely for some trap type music. This one just really feels like some mixtape type fare, some of that vintage 2 Chainz that you remember from back in the day. I'd have to suppose pretty good concept. Get that one in particular. This is definitely one of the more rugged and murky type ones. This one doesn't have as much polish. This one doesn't have as much polish, but I would still have to say it's a pretty highlighted one. So that's a good concept for that. And then 36 is a nice one. This is the shortest song on the album. It's still a pretty good highlight. I wouldn't skip over this song. I didn't used to mess with this song as much back in the day, but it is a pretty nice one. I definitely regret that now. So I'd have to say this song's like a crisp kind of night strolling type tune. I would have to say this is like a smoke a few kind of residential gem, and this is like a smoke a few kind of residential gem, I would have to say. And this is just like a good snackage and gas station type mid pace kind of turn up type song. And this song, despite how brief it is like a good snackage and gas station mid-pace turn-up type song, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good concept. Get that one in particular. Definitely feel like this is a night strolling type tune. I definitely feel like this is a pretty good night strolling type tune. Just definitely something for like 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. 10 o'clock p.m., 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. Just getting snacks, Taco Bell, something like that in the pitch hours of midnight, some of those type hours, just to kind of get some after hours type haze to some of those type pitches. Definitely like the concept of that one. Just some real nice kind of after hours fun, I would have to say. Just some good concepts kind of get that in particular. So to talk about some of the songs I don't recommend on here. Basically out of 17 songs on this particular album, there's only 5 that I don't recommend. So to talk about those songs, basically some of these, like You to Realist was just kind of a poor type one. This was almost kind of like a nightclub type song, just a stretching nightclub type loomer, but it just didn't pull off the energy that well. It was definitely kind of a dapper type song for some homies, but I just feel like the pitch behind it was just not quite as emphatic as it needed to be. It was just kind of one that just didn't have the draw as to what it probably needed. I just would have to suppose. I mean, I feel like 2 Chainz did a decent job with Least. I would have felt like 2 Chainz probably could have nailed that one, but it just didn't quite pull it off. It just didn't quite pull it off as much as it probably needed to. I'd have to say, Beautiful Pain and So We Can Live. Beautiful Pain, So We Can Live, and Black Unicorn were all some poor type ones. I just didn't really appreciate the pitch of some of these. These had some R&B hooks on here, but they just didn't do a good job of conveying that. I'd have to suppose these were all some more homely type ones and just kind of more sound type ones that just didn't do a good job of having that sort of compellment. They just didn't do a good job of having that compellingness about them. They just were not that much of like an affable kind of listen, didn't really have the spark towards them, and just something that jumped off the page, I'd have to suppose. I kind of felt like T-Pain and Lloyd and Chrisette Michelle should have been on better songs that just had a little bit more affability towards them. So those are just kind of duds. And then Outroduction was just kind of a poor soulful type one. This one was just kind of trying to be like some mixtape type fare, but just didn't really pull off that pitch at all, I'd have to suppose. Was just kind of the concept about it. So that's this kind of thing. So basically 12 out of 17 songs I recommend on here, all the deluxe songs, that type stuff. So 12 out of 17. I'm going to go ahead and give this album, similar to the first first Boast out. Similar to the score I gave the first Boats album back in December, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like an 8.75 out of 10. Just barely missed a 9 out of 10. Definitely a pretty super stellar album. I definitely appreciate quite a bit on here. It surprised me just because I didn't remember all these hits from back in the day. Definitely had some good ratchet type music and overall underground. Definitely had some good ratchet type music and just overall nightclub type fare that just was really polished and had some great stuff on here just to have that particular pitch. Some mainstream kind of EDM type stuff, a few kind of blue collar type numbers, some good exotic type songs on here, and just some overall mixtape type fare that just had some decent amount, that had some edgy kind of polish and growth that expanded upon 2 Chainz' sound around the time, I would have to say. So it's pretty dope concept. Get that. The social score, I'm gonna go ahead and give the social score like a 9.5 out of 10 because I feel like it's damn near a classic. If it would have had a third single and a little bit more promotion, I would probably, if it would have had a third single and a little bit more promotion, I probably would have given this album like a 10 out of 10. Just has a number of good ringers on here. This has a number of good, excellent ringers on here. Some definitely kind of mainstream ratchet type music to quote this particular album. I'd have to say definitely some EDM type tunes that continue to expand upon that sound. Some definite ratchet type music, some mixtape type fare, a little bit of drill in here, some stuff like that. Just some mixtape rumblers, some good overall polish, just some good rugged type bite, and just some stuff that just kind of has that particular kind of swirl, just a highlighted sense that just that particular swirl of like a highlighted sense that propels 2 Chainz to like some pretty good stardom, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept. Get this one. Definitely a good expansion and a necessary album. Like, don't think that this one is not necessary just because the singles are not quite as large. Singles were a little bit larger in 2012, but this album is still pretty good. It's definitely an album you don't want to miss out on. I think this particular concept is just some great. This is probably one of the most mainstream Ratchet albums. I mean, Ratchet didn't last super long. It was kind of there just between like 2012 and maybe 2015 or so, 2016, something like that. But this is definitely one of the more bona fide ratchet type albums for that sound that just didn't last horribly long. So I give it a 9.5 social. In terms of the future, like 2 Chainz dropped an album in November 2023 with Lil Wayne called Call of Grove 2, something like that. Welcome to Call of Grove as far as that pitch kind of happens. So we're gonna have to get some more of these. I am gonna review some mixtape type 2 Chainz as far as that pitch kind of happens with it, but it's definitely a pretty sheerly excellent album here, and I highly recommend it.